Welcome to the Bestiary, your one-stop shop for monster lore, info, and shenanigans. Join us as we take you through today's special feature.
All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Bestiary. My name is Morgan, and I'll be running the stream side of things. And we've got our host, John.
Hello, hello.
And Tyler.
Hello.
And our wonderful guest today. John, do you want to give the introduction you have? I know you have prepared.
I would love to. I'm really happy that we are joined today by Nathanael Cole. Welcome to the show. Nathanael, I've known him for a long time and have been impressed by him that entire time. Nathanael has the ability to run many, many projects at once, while also designing many games at once, while also still being able to stay clean shaven and smooth and just an all around cool guy.
Oh, thank you. I'm blushing.
Some of the projects that he's worked on, multiple game designs. The one that always sticks out in my head is Cannibal Contagion, which is now has been a while since you designed that.
It's been a while, yeah.
But was a early zombie game with a really cool card mechanic where you played with playing cards, and which I had the honor of being able to visit Camp Jesus.
Oh, the Jesus Camp Massacre. Yeah.
The Jesus Camp Massacre. I was an honored member of the Jesus Camp Massacre as part of a campaign there.
It's my new punk band name, the Jesus Camp Massacre.
It's your Nirvana cover band.
Yeah.
There you go.
But since then he has done many things. Probably the biggest thing right now is he has the Breakfast Puppies website where he runs a number of podcasts. Amongst them are he does Hammercrawl, which is a game he designed as well, and is just a classic dungeon crawl game with a lot of shenanigans, very fun. And Bikers, Dice, and Bars, which actually I want you to introduce because you gave the perfect introduction to this.
Okay, Bikers, Dice, and Bars is sort of a variety show that we do that is very heavily Portland-centric, but we do branch out to other areas. But essentially, it is the overlap of interests that we have found here of people who are into biking, and by that I mean motorcycles, bicycles, scooters, pretty much anything that's not a cage on wheels, into gaming, and that's video games, role-playing games, board games, what have you, and drinking. And those are the three overlapping subjects that we found so many people share at least two of those. And so we decided to just make a variety show where we cover various topics relating to one, two, or all three of those subjects. And
in addition, I mean, you're working on a game system right now, right? Involving motorcycles.
Previously, I published a game called Motobushido, which was a game about motorcycle riding samurai. And
wow.
Why have we not played this game?
John, you're slacking. Come on.
Yeah, it is ultimately a game of death. The premise is that you basically have to play the game like you have nothing to lose, and therefore it ends up very bloody and very quickly, because part of the character creation is you create a pack, or a gang, really, a pack of these Motobushi who are all brothers in the fight, and they all basically hate each other. So it's what I combined Sons of Anarchy with Seven Samurai, and I created a game based on that.
Yeah. So good.
But what is currently in the works is I'm finishing up the follow-up to that, which takes the same mechanics and applies it to transforming, combining mecha. So Voltron, Power Rangers, but you can even take it further. Steven Universe, any of those kind of combine together to create bigger forms and fight bigger monsters. It's a lot of fun.
Before we get too started, I did want to ask you just a quick question about your game design, because one of the things I've noticed in reading your games and playing some of your games is you seem to really have this idea of bringing things back to like the basics. I mean, some of your games are essentially one shots. Other ones are really based on like just getting you to the table, getting you too deep into the mechanics and the actual play.
Okay, let me lead you through a story here. And this story has a point.
Those are the best kind of stories.
When I was a child, I had a Nintendo Entertainment System. And one of my favorite things to do was whenever I got money that I'd saved up, I would go buy a video game. Of course, my mom would drive me to the store. I buy the video game, and on the way home, I've popped that game open, and I'm reading the instruction manual. I am devouring it from cover to cover. I read the freaking credits in the instruction manual. I wanted to know everything about it. I wanted to be ready the moment I walked in the door to slam that cartridge in and hit start. Now I'm 40. I don't have time to read the instruction manual.
Plus, they don't have instruction manuals.
They don't have them anymore.
Kids these days just don't get to appreciate getting all of your story in a little. I was a Game Boy player, so it was always the little, like 3-inch by 4-inch instruction manual.
Yeah.
So now I want to be able to turn the game on and start playing and have it teach me how to play. I don't really want a game that has like a little like how to play section on the main menu that I have to read in order to know it. So I've taken that and applied it to how I do role-playing games. Every game that I design has a tutorial built into it. So the game is both established by the tutorial. So you sit down as a group and you create your own world together using the game's mechanics. And then the game also teaches you the basics of what to play in an escalating fashion. That is core to every game I work on.
Awesome. That is a question I've wanted to ask you for a long time in following your work. So thank you for indulging me.
You're welcome.
But the real reason we're here today is to talk about a Dungeons and Dragons monster, and that is the Slaad. The Slaad, the Slaad, or the Slaadi, as they are known in plural terms.
Unless you're one of those 4th edition players in which they were temporarily known as Slaads.
It's true, and it's not nearly as fun.
Yep.
No, I'm so glad
as fun. No.
They went back. The Slaad. Well, Nathanael, do you want to give us an intro on what the Slaad are and why you wanted to talk about them tonight?
Okay, real quickly, they are trans-dimensional chaos frogs that breed by cutting you and planting eggs in you, and then 1 month later, a chest burster either comes out of you, or in the new edition, there's a version of them that after they cut you, generally after a week, you turn into one. Oh, and they evolve by eating each other and becoming bigger and badder Slaadi.
Yeah, sexual reproduction is kind of a big topic on this show, and I think this might be our deepest dive into
almost
it,
every
like,
monster.
Literally, half the fun of these guys is how they reproduce.
Yeah, it's a whole thing.
and because Nathaniel brought it up, I'm gonna run through it real quick. Just for
I have
people.
anatomy questions now.
Well, we might get to that too. Yes, as Nathaniel said, there are different colors of these Slaad, and the colors also kind of tell you how powerful they are generally. So at the very bottom are these tadpole things, and they are injected under your skin by a red Slaad. Red Slaad are like the most base of these frog. Should I call them frog Vikings? They're pretty vicious. They're
chaos. They are chaos manifest. So they can be vicious. Other times they might not give a shit. Yeah, they are pure chaos.
Good thing to remember. So these red guys, they slice you, you get a tadpole in you, it bursts out of your chest. Now, if you could cast spells of 3rd level or higher, it bursts out of your chest as a green Slaad.
Oh, you missed the blue Slaad, which is the one that, you get scratched by it, and then a week later you're like, I feel toad-like. And then the next thing you know, you're a Slaad.
Well, a blue Slaad comes about if you couldn't cast spells. Then you get the
that's for the
blue Slaad.
That's for the red Slaad, because the red Slaad makes blue and green Slaads, and the blue Slaad makes red and green Slaads.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, the red can create green or blue. The blue creates red or green. Eventually, if you cut somebody with magic, you become a green Slaad, one way or the other. Either with a tadpole that bursts out of your chest. Tadpole, it's a thing with me.
It's all about the
that
tadpoles.
bursts out of your chest, or you turn into it from this chaos disease. And then the green Slaad eventually becomes a gray Slaad, kind of by process unknown. After many, many years of self-reflection, it becomes a gray Slaad. And then
didn't I read somewhere that like they have to go bunker down for like 100 years, or if they're 100 years,
after a
then they go bunker
century,
down?
They like after a century they've like acquired the chaotic wisdom to go hermit themselves out and then emerge as a gray Slaad.
And then the gray Slaads can become the death Slaads, and after 100 years, and then after 100 years, if a death Slaad's still alive, then it become, I think, a white Slaad. The anything past death is new, so I'm not super familiar with it. But death used to be the top.
They changed that around. So gray Slaads now, to become a death Slaad, they actually have to eat a death Slaad. They have to eat its entire body.
Yes.
And
they have to eat
it.
another death Slaad?
A gray Slaad has to eat a death Slaad. And death
become a
Slaad.
But then how is there a death Slaad in the first place if you have to eat one?
Well,
to
because
become
there
one?
was originally 4 death Slaads, and they used to be the rulers of the Slaad. Then in 4th edition, they added.
Is that why there's no Slaad Lords in 5th edition?
It's part of.
Yeah,
it's kind of
what happened?
They dropped this. So, okay, well, now we got to go into this. So
I am a little overwhelmed right now. Okay.
we should probably back up and say that Slaad began as the brainchild of Charles Strauss.
Fucking Strauss. Yes.
Charles Strauss. That was it. And Nathanael, do you want to tell us a little bit about Charles Strauss?
He's a fantastic science fiction writer. Man, he's really good at creating fantastic things that you could never imagine on your own until he writes and explains it to you. Like, one was the traveling interdimensional living carnival known as Festival of one of his series, which is, I think, it's one of the greatest sci-fi creations of all time. Anyway, I think he put them in the Fiend Folio.
That's right.
First edition.
1981,
Yep.
First edition Fiend Folio. And we've talked about the history of the Fiend Folio in another podcast. I don't remember. The Flumps, of course, the Flumps, because that was where the Flumps come from. So, and
friends.
if you know anything about the Flumps, you know that the Fiend Folio was sort of it was, I don't know if it was meant to be jokey, but it was taken jokey, very much.
Well,
so.
especially, do you have pictures for us? Can you bring us a picture of the original?
They were, what Tyler's really pointing out is that they used to look like just frog men with
They were kind of silly looking.
no real horror aspect to them, except in the description.
They just looked like slightly scarier bullywugs.
Yeah. And a bullywog is like a fat 2-legged frog. So if it just stands, I mean, they kind of look like the frogs from Spirited Away. So if you picture that as being scary, it's hard. It's a hard transition. But eventually, they were expanded in Planescape during 3rd edition, and that tried to make them a little scarier. All the way back, though, even in the beginning, were these Slaad Lords. Do you know much about the Slaad Lords, Nathaniel?
A significant amount of them. The one that has always been my favorite one was Igorl. And Igorl, so if anybody's a PlayStation 2 gamer, there was a short...
Demon Stone.
Forgotten Realms Demon Stone, where Igorl, the Slaads and the Githyanki were the 2 enemies of the game. And it was basically a hack and slash game where you swapped between 3 characters in Forgotten Realms, but the Githyanki and the Slaads, you're like, what? Why has no one brought these into games before? So the Slaads were so fucking awesome, and the leader of the Slaads, Igorl, was voiced by none other than Michael Clark Duncan.
That was my
amazing.
favorite fact that I was like... Yeah. Reading about Slaads and was like, Slaad Lord, voiced by Michael Clark Duncan. I was like, fuck yes.
In that same game, Kelvin Blackstaff was voiced by Patrick Stewart.
Wow, that I didn't know.
So if you're ever reading a Forgotten Realms book and Blackstaff shows up, just Here, Picard.
Engage.
Well, and your girl is, as Nathaniel mentions, he was one of these Slaad lords. So originally the Slaad lords, they were never really presented as deities. They were just Slaad that had reached the ultimate level of Slaadiness. They were ridiculous. I love these guys. The four that are mentioned in 1995, Dragon Magazine 221 is you've got there's the Slaad.
I've got the names. I've got all the names.
You got the names?
Loading.
I think it's Sendam,
Sendam, Chorst, and Rinbu were the other ones. Yeah.
Right. And we could cover them briefly. Like Sendam is the Lord of Insanity, and her whole thing is she's a giant golden blob that just eats everything. Igurl is just Michael Clark Duncan, so there you go. He's a skeletal, like a Slaad who rides a dragon. And then
he has changed forms in every edition. He did not look like that at all in Demon Stone, let's just say.
It's underwhelming after you've seen the like second edition black and white like skeletal demon figure with a scythe riding a dragon.
But my favorite Slaad lord is Renbu, the Lord of Colors, because he's essentially an insane artist. And literally he's just described as he builds crazy shit out of people and things, and and they live in limbo where you can kind of do anything. But his favorite thing is to just change your color. But he does this in the most devious ways. Like when I first read it, I was like, how is this ever devious? But then they talk about like he'll take a drow and make it look like a normal elf, or he'll take a normal elf and make it look like a drow. Or my favorite one was he takes the 5 eggs from a gold dragon and he makes each of the dragon babies a different chromatic dragon color. Even though they're gold dragons, he changes their color to just create pure chaos and insanity.
At least on the power scale, Rinbu is, I believe, the only one who attracts Slaad followers of the entire spectrum, which ultimately makes him the most dangerous as well. But he doesn't care.
I also like that they have a Slaad Lord of randomness.
Isn't that kind of just the whole species?
Yes. He's the most Slaad of all Slaad.
Oh, all right.
So one thing that I'm so happy to hear, Nathaniel, tonight to talk about is the Slaad with their various ways of reproducing. It all seems to go through different versions of the horror genre. I mean, you've got, and every aspect of them seems to speak to a different version. You've got body horror. You've got this sort of mystery, horror mystery. You don't really know what they're going to do or where they come from. You've got just pure monster. I mean, they're giant clawed frog things that want to eat you and impregnate you. They are, and then you've also got this like Lovecraftian piece that actually I read an interview with their creator, and he talked about that was like a major influence for him. Was he wanted to create something that felt like it would come out of a Lovecraft story. And he was inspired by the very famous one, Innsmouth, in their design. So he kind of wanted that was what he said when he read it when he was younger. That's kind of what he pictured was the Slaad. And then he realized much later that he made up this entire reproduction cycle that wasn't ever written by Lovecraft. But the reason I bring that up is I know you are a horror aficionado on top of your other traits. And I kind of wanted to get your sense of why, well, first of all, how, as a DM, can you really tap into the horror of the Slaad? How would you do that?
Okay. My first exposure to Slaad can give shine some light on this. It was a dungeon magazine that I actually looked up the number. Dungeon number 43 contains my favorite dungeon module of all time, which was a single player module called Jacob's Well. And I remember the first time I read it, it was actually the first dungeon magazine I ever purchased. And it had this in here, and it's like, this is amazing. It is essentially the movie Alien but at a frozen trading post out in some northern wasteland that you can't leave.
Okay.
So you're trapped in this blizzard inside this trading post, and everyone is slowly dying because overnight an alien burst out of someone's chest. And then you have to start tracking it down, and anyone could be infected, and you have to start wheeling out who is and who's not. And it's a fantastic game.
So it's The Thing.
Very similar. Yeah.
It's The Thing with chest bursters.
So when you play this single player, it's like a choose your own adventure, like they did that style?
What they did instead of choose your own adventure is the adventure is presented in a series of days and time frames. That on day one, this will happen in the morning, this will happen in the evening, and this will happen at night, and so on. So It's like 3 days. So it breaks it down as what's happening, regardless of what the player does. These things are happening. Well, I should say, if the player does nothing, this is the course of events that will follow.
Okay, so you are given that up front as the
Yes.
player. Okay.
Well, no, the
then you're
GM is
trying
given that, and then the player is just inserted into the situation.
When you said single player, I thought you meant like it was a solo adventure.
No. Sorry.
Like, okay, I see
one
what you
GM,
mean.
one player.
Oh, that's a cool. Still, that's actually almost more rare because I know a lot of solo adventures. I don't know a lot of single PC, single DM adventures. Oh, very cool. Okay, so and I'm guessing, of course, they are Slaad. That is what's happening in this adventure. So that was your intro to them.
That was my intro. Yeah.
Did you get a chance to run them after that at any point?
Oh, over and over and over again. Because there's certain things about Slaads. When you were listing all of the things that make them scary, you forgot one that a lot of people forget about. And because it's kind of usually just like one little sentence that people read over, almost all of Slaadi have the ability to, at will, gate in more Slaads. So you're fighting 1, now you're fighting 2, now you're fighting 4, now you're fighting 8, now you're fighting 16. Good luck with that, sir.
That feels a bit like cheating. Just a little
that
unfair
feels
there.
terrifying.
And some of them can gate in more than 1. So I think the Death Slaad can gate in like up to 12 at a time.
And they also have the ability to take on humanoid form and sort of pretend to be normal.
Yeah. Not all of them do, but some of them. I don't think the Reds can do that.
No, I think the reds and the blues can't, but greens can. And then beyond that, they can also, use the spell tongues, because on their base stats, they can't speak common. They're not the brightest. So like a green Slaad, can look like a human, but it's just gotta stand there looking shifty, and it's like, hey, what are you doing? Transform into a toad monster and attack you.
They're actually surprisingly stupid. So I love using them because, one, the tactics that players will typically use to overcome a lot of monsters usually involve, a handful of set prerogatives. Like, okay, this is our nuke prerogative. This is our charge forth and stab prerogative. This is our fire at it from a distance prerogative. But almost all of those involve some form of trying to defeat through action. But Slaads typically can't be defeated through direct action unless you have mastered the situation yourself. If you have learned their stupidity and learned to use that against them, if you have, because they follow even though they're chaotic, they actually follow pretty predictable patterns. And those patterns are, you can always count on them to be chaotic. And that's why I really like bringing them out, because first off, when you describe a frog thing, people immediately think, oh, it's a bullywug. And you're like, oh, you think so?
For those who don't know, a bullywog is like a 1/4 challenge creature.
Yeah. They're like kobold frogs.
Yeah. They're very easy to knock over. So I could see how that could be a nice bait and switch.
Yeah, but something like a gray Slaad or a death Slaad could be a major antagonist over time. Like their machinations they can drive an entire set of adventures, if not a campaign.
Well, like the Death Slaad, like once in for 5th edition, their main goal once they hit Death Slaad is like assemble a force of red and blue Slaads and then just take them into another plane to propagate the species.
Yep.
So you roll up and there's a Death Slaad. And there's an army of these creatures whose whole purpose is to like hit you once and then run away.
And run away so they can hit somebody else.
And if you don't know what a Slaad is, your DM's like, okay, you're attacked by this blue Slaad, and then it runs away and you don't see it. Make a DC check. Okay, well I rolled a 12. Okay. And then, like a week goes by in game time. It's like, you're not feeling that great. Okay, you're a hideous monster now. Wait, what happened to my character? You died.
I found it. This is the 2nd edition version that I'm most familiar with. I'll just read this little paragraph here. Red Slaadi have a special gland under the skin of each claw. When one hits with a claw attack, there is a 25% chance that an egg pellet is transferred to its opponent's body. The egg pellet begins to slowly move through the victim's body, often without the victim even knowing he has been infected, until it reaches the chest cavity. There it gestates for 3 months, forming a baby red Slaad that, once formed, eats its way out of the victim's body, killing him, usually in the course of 24 hours.
Morgan, I got to ask you, what is the most disturbing notion of all this to you?
There's no place in the chest cavity for something to grow.
That is not the answer I was expecting.
No, you just
well,
feel
but
like
the lung is
fever,
like you can feel
shortness of
pressure
breath.
in your lung. Like it would have to be like deep space pelvis. Like there's actually a space in your pelvis that just doesn't have anything, and doctors hate to go there because they don't know what's there. So like that would be a good place for it. And then it would erupt out of your stomach horrifically. But there's literally no space in your chest cavity to, like, you've got heart and lungs and diaphragm and liver and spleen and kidneys and like.
Yeah, but you don't really need
no
a spleen. It just like eats the spleen and takes over.
There you go.
I like that a doctor could be operating and there's this space where they literally have written, "Here be monsters."
I work with surgeons who try to avoid that area.
Okay, so I do have a note on that, which is the consideration that this is a fantasy role-playing game that is commonly based upon affectations of medieval Europe, in which everyone has rotten teeth. They probably die before they reach the age of 40. They have terrible medical, and probably all of them for most of their adult lives are in pain from one thing or another. The life of a common human in this world sucks balls.
And in America, 2020.
Yeah, exactly. So my whole take is that something, oh no, I'm having chest pains. Oh, get over it. Go back and work in the fields kind of thing. Yeah.
Gotcha. I love that too, because you're right. That makes it like nobody's going to notice. Like it really does get into you got chest pains. Like, well, so did your grandfather.
I've got this weird growth on my back. Is it the one on the left or the one on the right? What do you mean the one on the right?
In the past 24 years, I've killed 3 player characters by having Slaads burst out of them. See, now I'm saying Slaads too. Slaadi.
The slide, either one works. I mean, they were both published. It's just the more refined human being calls them Slaadi. But
I will make a note that all 3 of those games, one player made a statement. We don't need a cleric. Really?
So once the chest burster came out of your player, what did it? Did you have it grow? Did the other players go, "Oh my God," and kill it? Was it a scene from Alien? Did it take over the world? What happened?
Well, in all three cases, this is something I've always loved doing, ever since I was a teenager, is whenever I have a cool idea like that frequently either involves a player turning against the party through mind control or something, or a player doing something that's going to cause their death, I will always take them aside before and be like, look, this is what's going to happen tonight. You can embrace it or you can work against it. They almost always embrace it, because when you hand a player the opportunity to fuck with the rest of their party,
There's only one thing players love more than fucking with the DM, and it's fucking with everybody else.
So in all three cases, I had willing players who are like, dude, this has to happen, and let me describe my death. I'm like, okay.
Oh, that's awesome. And well, that kind of gets back to some of the horror questions, why do you think people love the horror genre? Why is it so enticing? Why do we like seeing these things that actually turn us off and terrify us?
It's adrenaline. It's a way. It's that form of excitement that we frequently don't get in our lives. And from my opinion, it's that understanding that none of this could actually happen. So I'm going to live through it through this medium and get my thrills out on it and then go back to life. I think that's what horror does for a lot of people. Like, there is safety in horror because you're watching something and it's not real. Yeah. And you can get a thrill from that, and you can feel fear that you probably are thinking, I'm never going to be chased by a man with knives on his fingers, but I'm going to experience that for an evening.
And then you move to Portland.
No.
So there's also a bit of an exposure catharsis in that as well, where you're exposing yourself to something in order to experience it from a safe place, from a controlled environment.
Definitely. Right. Yeah.
Well, I feel like part of the other reason it's popular is because it's a what if situation. Like, what if I found myself in this, like, I dropped my keys at the wrong time. Like, every time I do that, when I get out of my car and I drop my keys, I'm like, and now I'm in a horror film. Okay. Like, let's look behind me before I bend over to pick that up. Like, I think that gives you that, what would I do different if I were in that position? And like, it's kind of becomes a little bit of a game for some people, I think, to outthink, the killer in that sense.
And outthink the victims, because right, we always also are like, we would do that much better. We would not go into that house. We would not.
Let's split up, gang. No,
we wouldn't have sex in the lake.
Yep.
That's why I really like the movie Cabin in the Woods, because if nobody has watched it, without giving away spoilers, they lampshade those themes, and there are actual capable characters in it who think like, oh, what would a horror movie character do? I'm not going to do that. It's pretty solid.
And at the same time, I think there's a little bit of a battle royale fun that comes from this too, right? It's like a death match. Throw the monster into, throw a bunch of humans into a situation with a big monster and see who survives, how long they survive. It's kind of like watching a cage fight in a way. Of just a very extended one. And when you're playing Dungeons and Dragons, you get to be the fighters. You get to be the pit fighters and live out those excitements as well. So your players always went with the option of let it burst out.
Well, okay, no. The players who had reached that critical point, when I finally told them, look, at some point tonight, your character's going to die because a monster's going to burst out of your chest, and it's too late. There's absolutely nothing you can do about it. I'm just letting you know because that's going to happen. Do you want to embrace it? And they all said yes. I have used Slaadi before where people have detected it in advance with the disease, I think detect evil or whatever. And it's easy to get rid of with like remove curse. And usually they're like, oh yes, boom, getting rid of it now. Thank you. Nope.
And once it bursts out, did your campaign continue on involving the Slaadi then? Or was it just an event? You're like, well, that's how Jeff died. And
I had wanted them to in all three cases, but unfortunately, when the Slaadi burst out, the rest of the party were on point and murdered the shit out of that thing. So unfortunately, I did not get to take it in that direction. And it wasn't like I could do like a quantum Slaadi and just have one appear at whatever path they took. I try to do sandboxes, so I let them have those victories.
That was probably a smart move. Yeah. Tyler, Morgan, I don't want to dominate the full time here. Do you guys have questions for Nathanael?
Well, I mean, I thought it was interesting that instead of like a lot of the monsters that we discussed earlier that are all about, world domination in the I'm going to kill everything in front of me kind of a way, these were just like, aha, and run away. Like they were like the weirdest ambush predators in that sense. So I thought that was super interesting. But I'm still like, So they have eggs like just in their nails.
One of the variations that I read, they have an annual sort of mating season where in Limbo, they're from Limbo, they reach this period of chaotic mating frenzy where occasionally some Slaad are born from Slaads, but where they fertilize the eggs and then they just have. For the red Slaad, they have little egg sacs kind of under their, at the base of their claws on their fingers.
Well, and it's described as a hermaphroditic orgy. Like, I mean, I loved that description. It was like, so they just kind of make some eggs and carry around.
I was
Hey, do you want
already at
some?
the point of like disgusted and horrified. And then I got to the mating frenzy and my mind was just like, there's just the what do they call it? The spawning stone, like a sun over this writhing mass of toad creatures. And I was just like, oh, okay.
What?
This is the worst thing in all of the fever dreams I could possibly have.
And my favorite part about it is the spawning stone, like it travels because someone will just come in and be like, and take it to like the next party. Like, I love the thought, like it's like like if you're in college and you're just like, hey, I brought the spawning stone. Shit's gonna get crazy. Let's do this, guys.
It's like the ultimate
Guess
kegger.
what I got in here? And you pull out the spawning stone. They did change that in 5th.
See, I'm not cool with that. I like the craziness. I love it.
5th did I'm pretty pleased with their Slaad treatment as far as it seems to be. They collected a lot of the data and kind of made it a little bit more easy to get through as far as it's all in one place instead of spread over 3 monster manuals like it was in 4th edition. But they do. 5th edition is definitely dumbed down. We noticed this in our Mind Flayer episodes and our Aboleth episodes. They became a little more family friendly in their stuff. They stopped talking about.
Second Ed Mind Flayers were the best.
They were pretty rocking.
Oh yeah.
They don't discuss the mating frenzy.
Well, they do. They talk about it now. It's pretty much the spawning stone is a stone Primus created. But this was interesting. I did like this. In this version, the spawning stone is Primus created it to create order and chaos. And in Limbo, it actually became infected with chaos and then started spawning the Slaadi.
Well, the Slaad are the actual corruption of the stone itself. They're literally chaos in an ordered form.
And I love Primus's reaction is he kind of looks over, he's like, okay.
I'm sure this will be fine.
Just let it happen. It's fine.
Yeah, and it actually
Don't think too much about it.
It mentions he claims them as his children, but he doesn't like mess with it. He's just like, well, those were my early days. Like,
Back in the day, it was Igorl created it. And remember, basically, it was a let there be sex. And he created the spawning stone and thus began the frog orgies. Yeah. Lasciviously grinding chaos frogs. Yes.
That is the name of my side project to my punk band. Lasciviously grinding chaos frogs. It's the mandolin covers of my punk band covering Nirvana.
So Nathanael, was there anything you wanted to bring up about Slaad? that brought you to this conversation tonight?
Well, you had been talking about doing this series and doing different monsters, and I remember immediately thinking, Slaadi. Because no one I know loves Slaadi. They frequently are forgotten because I found that a lot of DMs forget about extraplanar creatures. Like they're not frequently largely featured in a lot of campaigns, in a lot of published modules. A lot of people tend to go with the tried and true, the standard monsters, some variant of dragon or demons. But when you do things like Slaadi, or if you flip it around and you do like Modrons, you are challenged to create an unusual story. Like, this isn't just going to be go into a dungeon and kill the Slaad Lord. It's find out what the hell this guy is up to and stop the chaos spawning before it teleports into your dimension, fucks everything up, and just leaves.
I'm really glad you brought that up, and I actually want to get your thoughts on this because we have a lot of new DMs who listen to the show, and I think that one of the reasons that maybe like the Slaadi and the Modron and these extraplanar creatures are ignored sometimes is because they do kind of create that blank page, right? It's like a blank page, and a DM now has to fill that page with like a good story, and we don't have a lot to draw upon because, like, if you want to do orcs, you've got Lord of the Rings and a billion other projects that you can do orcs that you know these stories, right? So it's like, okay, I feel comfortable telling this story. If you do goblins, same thing with, we know these stories, we've been told them a million times, dragons, all that stuff. But like chaos frogs, lasciviously grinding chaos frogs, like I've not heard that story, which is, I think you're right, that's what makes it so great to use. But my question for you and in response to new DMs is, what would your advice be on how to fill that page? Like what's a good way to go about that?
Find a monster manual, or actually find any monster book from any RPG, flip around until you find something that looks truly unusual. And it could be one of those joke monsters like the Flumph, or it could be something like the what's that tripedal demon, or it's not the Odieg. Maybe it's the Odieg. I don't know. Oh no, it's an elemental. It's a tripedal elemental.
Yeah, the Odieg eats crap and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, find something like the Odieg. Find something that is truly odious and strange, that you look at it and you would think, oh man, I could never use that in a game. The moment you think that, stop. Read it again and come up with a way to use it in a game. Like, think of, what does it want? What are its motivations that would be totally different from the gnolls that are filling the mine, or the goblins that are raiding town? What are these three Odiegs doing in this region, and how are they going to fuck shit up? And how can the players stop it?
And do you think that it is important to have, like, obviously it's called Dungeons and Dragons. Do you think you need to build a dungeon for each creature? Or do you think like situations are maybe more handy? Like you said, find a motivation. It wants to take over this town, and then you can place all the action in that town. Or do you feel that each monster also deserves a dungeon?
I think a lot of monsters do not deserve dungeons. But then again, like, how do you define a dungeon? Like, is it in an underground room with doors and slimy walls? Or could a dungeon be a forest? Or could a dungeon be a jumping puzzle across floating clouds? So I guess you could take the concept of the dungeon being that it's a stage of your game where everything is happening, and just change the colors. And sure, then you could give everything a dungeon. You could even use the same dungeon crawling mechanics.
I actually found a resource I don't feel like we've mentioned, but I definitely would plan on using it going forward. I was trying to look up some of the adventures that Slaads were in to get a sense of them, and I found a website called adventurelookup.com. So you can just you go to adventurelookup.com and you type in, I want mountains. I wanted Slaads. They had 17 different campaigns.
Oh,
Oh my
gosh.
God.
This is cool.
And
Dude.
it sort of gave me a sense of like, okay, this is what people think of using Slaads for. And it's almost always kind of a touchstone to like, there's a bigger thing happening here, which I thought was a neat use. Like Slaads are your touchstone to like, you're not just in the normal campaign anymore. It feels like.
1,057 adventures found with mind flayers.
I thought it was cool that they were such a niche creature when I was looking at it.
That's an amazing find, Tyler. No, thank you. That's really useful.
I just right now came up with an idea for a Slaadi campaign. So anybody can use it.
I love this.
So here's how this goes.
I love this.
The spawning stone, so change their culture just a little bit so that whenever their spawning is over, the spawning stone randomly teleports to a new dimension. And now they have to go on an interdimensional hunt to find it. So suddenly, in the player's area, this boom monolith just appears in the middle of their town. They know nothing about it. Maybe the players are thinking, hit things with sticks. So you start to lead them on a red herring into the 2001 kind of direction of the monolith. But instead, suddenly, people start reporting that are strange monsters roaming around town that look like frogs. Within 2 days, the area is going to become,
Lascivious grinding chaos frogs.
And the players have to figure it out and stop it. The only way to do it is to find some method to teleport that stone away from there.
Nice.
Oh, that's really cool.
I like that.
And you've got people who want to teleport it to as a political move, to teleport it to the spaces of their enemies, and these different factions come together and say, well, we'll help you teleport it, but only if you do it here. And the players get involved. I like the thought of this campaign. This is a good one. That actually all fits into. I sometimes take guests through a gauntlet of questions related to the monster they picked, scenarios, things, just to see how fast you can think on your feet and give us some fun answers.
Okay.
And that was one of the questions: is quickly come up with a thing. So you already answered that. Before we jump into this, Tyler, Morgan, do you have anything for you?
Oh, I had one more bit on the notable adventures that I found, which was that they were part of Die Vecna Die, which is the last campaign published for 2nd edition.
And a great campaign, by the way. Okay. Well, here we go then. We'll jump into this. So that was my first question, was come up with an adventure for the Slaad. But
Got it.
From here, we're going to go, and it's kind of as fast as you can answer stuff off the top of your head. So you are infected by a Slaad. You realize you're infected, but you're in the middle of a desert, and you have plenty of food and water to keep you going, but it's going to be days, weeks before you get out of here. What do you do?
Do I have a weapon?
Let's say you have a dagger.
Okay. Well, if it's days or weeks, then depends on my con score, I guess. But I'll try to carve that fucker right out of there.
You're gonna go where no doctor has gone before.
Either I kill myself or it kills me. Either way, I'm dying.
Roll a D100.
Maybe I might survive.
You are sent as a missionary to a village, an isolated village. You get there, the teleport gate shuts down. You're getting ready to do your job, and you start hearing rumors of these frog people popping up in this village, and you think you know what it is, but you have no idea who's infected or how. You don't have remove curse as a spell. You're not that level of missionary yet. What do you do?
Do I have detect evil?
Ooh,
well,
let's say no. Let's make it interesting.
Okay.
I think it depends on the edition you're playing, because technically the only the death Slaads are chaotic evil in 5th. The rest of them are neutral.
Oh, that's true.
Fascinating.
That's true. I forgot.
But they are extra
Good catch.
planar. So I don't know. Okay.
Oh,
We'll say you're a young acolyte. Yeah. They gave you a couple cure wound spells and said, go spread the word of Paylor.
Payor. Okay. Damn. That's definitely going to start a witch hunt. Let's see. I'm a fire and brimstone cleric, which means I'm going to go ahead and start a witch hunt. I'm going to drag everyone out to town. And instead of social isolation, I'm going to cause social conjunction, lock them all in a house and see what happens.
Social conjunction. Which is the name of my band that plays sometimes open for Tyler's band.
God.
Oh, okay, I love that. Best voice actor for a Slaad that's not Michael Clark Duncan.
Of course, Mark Hamill. But Mark Hamill as the Joker.
Oh,
Yeah.
well.
As the Joker
Right.
playing a Slaad. So I just want a Slaad with the Joker's voice. Yeah.
Okay, next one. There, you have to come up right now on the spot. There's a new form of Slaad reproduction. Go. And I don't mean spotting stuff. I mean like to create a single other spot.
I'm sorry,
Slaad.
because I have a potty brain. The first place my brain went to was through, you gotta shit that thing out. It's getting a Slaad, it's just the chef Slaad. It infects your food, and when you eat it, you have eggs, and you gotta crap them out.
Oh, God.
my
That just
God.
fell into a very bad
Bad
place.
This is why people need to wash their hands in Forgotten Realms. That's a terrible thought. Oh my God.
20 seconds,
wow.
You can sing the Song of the Crescent Moon, and you can get all that done. Yeah.
I feel like this might actually fit in fourth edition. There was something called the putrid Slaad, who would like vomit like bile and stuff. And all the fourth edition Slaad are kind of like taken from Left 4 Dead.
Maybe I should give fourth edition another chance.
I mean, you say that.
You know, it's fun. Fourth edition is a great board game. Let me put it that way. It's a wonderful board game. Not such a great RPG.
Fair enough.
But okay, and new color for Slaad and ranking, social ranking.
Fuchsia.
Ooh.
As for ranking, I think it would be Fuchsia exists only underneath the doesn't give a fuck Slaad Lord.
All of them.
I forget his name. The multicolored one. Yeah. Rinbu. Yes, Rinbu.
The Lord of Colors. Okay, that's my favorite.
Yeah,
Lord
so
of Colors,
Fuchsia would be a servant of Rinbu that's sole purpose is to go out into the world and make all of the other Slaads jealous that they're not also Fuchsia.
That's great. That's really good.
The prismatic Slaad.
That's good. We're on our last three.
Okay.
Here they are. First of all, I don't know if you already told us who your favorite Slaad Lord was.
Igorol.
Yeah,
That's mainly
Igorol.
because
And
he was the first, and also because of Michael Clark Duncan.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Okay, that's right. We went over that. So then the next question was, you are a new Slaad Lord rises up to fight the Slaad Lords. Who is it? What's their color? What's their power? And who were they before this? Because all the Slaad Lords is the other thing. They can sometimes they take the form that they used to be. Like I think what's her name was a elvish woman, and the Igorol is like a dark skinned man, and we know that's who they burst from at some point in their past. Anyway.
Oh, I got this one. This one is based on a former player's character this player, he was brand new to D&D. This campaign started about 4 or 5 years ago. This guy joined us. He was brand new, never played an RPG ever. And he ended up playing the single most chaotic thief I've ever seen, but not an annoying chaotic, not an evil chaotic, more of a pure chaos incarnate character who you could just never quite expect what he was going to do. And to me, that is core to the essence of being a Slaad. So I think he's going to ascend to higher levels of Slaadness. And his name is Akare. He is going to be the infiltrator Slaad, the one who comes in and places all of the little Slaad eggs in the nursery, in all of the little baby mouths, because
he's like Santa Slaad.
Yes.
Oh, Santa Slaad. I love
Yep.
it. Oh, that's genius. Okay. Oh, I'm going to throw one in from the chat. Black Mama says we all have to come up with a Slaad name real quick. Name your Slaad.
Name your Slaad
Name
character.
your Slaad. Name your Slaad. We'll start with Tyler. Name your Slaad.
Quarrel.
And his color.
Prismatic.
And what's his favorite chaotic thing to do?
His favorite chaotic thing to do would be nothing. Because what's more chaotic than nothing?
Morgan.
I'm gonna go with Cruat.
Ooh, you came up
I
with a
saw
name.
this question coming, so I actually looked. I
looked up
did some
Slaad
thinking
names?
earlier. I knew this was
Morgan
going to be
is
a question.
historically bad at coming up with names. She cannot do it on the spot.
No, I can't.
She comes up with great names. I should say that. Great names, but she does a lot of research into her names. Okay.
Yeah.
Cora, what's the color?
His name is Cruat, and I'm well, it's named. They're kind of genderless, right?
They choose. Depending on the spawning season.
So color, I'm gonna go with blue to be different. And its favorite thing to do is to hide under beds.
Nice. Okay. I'll be Soup Soup. Soup Soup is a gray Slaad who realized that they were never going to make it to Deaf Slaad. They just don't have what it takes. Soup Soup, they don't have a good name. They don't have like the right stuff. So instead, this gray Slaad occupies their time with, they take bits of technology from other planes and introduces them into planes where that technology isn't there, and the people are not prepared to make use of that technology in a productive way. So, they might give sewer systems to an entire race that just has no idea how to do this, or airplanes to a race that like just isn't ready for that responsibility. iPhones to Americans. It's just they're all, that's his whole thing. And Nathaniel.
Okay, I've been thinking on this, and we could make this character an NPC in that campaign. And his name is Squelch, and he is also a blue Slaad. Now, his entire purpose in existence is to lasciviously grind on that stone. But he is obsessed with being the first to grind on the stone, to the point that he will do anything to get to the stone before anyone else, as long as he gets to grind on it first and then be the center of all of the grinding. He believes that is his way to become a great Slaad. So perhaps there would be a way that he could be maybe courted into the party's favor if they can somehow talk to a Slaad and convince him that they're working in his interests to move the stone to a more grind-tacular location. Yes.
Well, first, I just have to tell you that I'm having flashbacks because you just described going to Wilson High School in 2002. So thanks for that.
That brings me to a question I came up with while we were talking about this. So your party is trying to communicate with Squelch. Obviously you're going to have to, flavor text a little bit and have some Slaad. What does Slaad sound like?
Ooh. Oh, God.
That's a good question.
I mean, they are frogs, so.
Will they speak? God, so many different editions have different languages, but I know they speak some kind of a chaotic tongue.
I'm going to pull up 5th edition. 5th edition gives them at least the language of Slaad. That's helpful.
Yeah. The language Slaad.
Mm-hmm.
They speak
No,
Slaad.
that was the problem. They can't speak common.
And telepathy.
So.
They have telepathy as well.
Yeah. So what I would do is have them probably, his name is Squelch, so he probably makes, squelchy noises that, probably some guttural frog and but you turn it outwards, and you'll really have to throw your voice into it. Probably hack up a lung as you do it.
Oh, yeah. I like that. All right. The last question on the gauntlet was, what is the #1 best prank you could play on a friend using a Slaad? And I don't mean a friend, you, the DM, they're a player. I mean, you're in the Forgotten Realms. You're going to play a funny prank on this guy using a Slaad.
Oh man, send him to Makeout Point, but Makeout Point just happens to be the place where the stone just teleported to. So tell him if he takes his lady for it there, he will definitely have a good time.
I tell him to call out Squelch as he gets there. Oh, well, bravo. Thank you. You made it through the gauntlet, and they were excellent answers. That's awesome. So much fun. Well, does Morgan, Tyler, do you have any questions for Nathaniel or more on Slaad? Do we have anything from the chat?
Nothing from the chat, and I've just kind of been enjoying the weirdness of this creature. It's just so like, I have no words for my just confusion. Like my rational brain is clearly trying to argue how this is feasible, and it's not. And but I think that's also something that we've run into with modern gamers nowadays. Like, because there is so much lore that is being based in science and what is actually feasible that you will have players potentially argue, well, that's BS. There's no like, so essentially because of our culture and how we're basing even science fiction and fantasy on more and more realism, how would you confront a player who's being more resistant to the out there kind of nature of the Slaad?
Man, that's tough. That is really tough. And that's something I struggle with frequently when I run fantasy games, is players that try to approach every situation like it's realistic, and they try to use science and logic and things such like common sense to overcome a lot of problems. And I know it sounds funny me saying you shouldn't use common sense, but a lot of fantasy gaming is meant to be evocative and foreign, almost alien in some of the things you encounter. And that's tough. I think that's to me not a problem with the monster, and that's a problem that has to be worked out on contract with the players. Like, you got to tell them beforehand when you start a game like this, crazy shit's going to happen, and embrace it.
Well, and especially like if someone's like, okay, this is happening with the Slaad, and they're like, well, that's not logical. It's like, well, it's a creature that is the literal embodiment of chaos. What part of that sentence implies that anything is going to be logical from that point on?
Do you ever watch fantasy movies or anime or read a book or anything in these genres, and you get really inspired by it and you think, man, this is what I want my games to be like? Because all of these characters are in the moment, and they portray the world that they were raised in. And then you get to the table with this concept, and you have this group of players that are just like approaching everything as if it was modern day rationalism and the scientific method kind of thing to solve all the problems. That's happened so often that to me it's definitely more of a group issue than a weird ass monster issue. I've had groups that I could not bring something like a Slaad into. I just couldn't, because they would get pissed if they couldn't defeat it.
And maybe that is do you think that can be solved by laying out expectations early on?
Absolutely.
Saying, hey, this is right first session, saying, and actually this is something we haven't talked about in our DM's advice before, but really good idea in your very first session of any campaign. Talk to the players. I know you've already selected them. I know you're friends with them all, but get them together and say, hey, this game is going to be gritty and serious, or this game is going to be goofy and fun, and we're going to let everyone go where they want. Or give them the expectations of the story you want to tell. Don't railroad them. You can tell them, hey, I don't know where this is going to go, but the style, the genre, the feeling I want is this.
I feel like you did that with us, John, when we started out, and in our discussions about, hey, what are you looking for our next campaign? We kind of just have an open discussion about that. I just thought it would be an interesting question to bring up based on how crazy this character is. Like if you were to run into that situation. So I know it's a little off topic, but
No. It's a wonderful question. And I'm glad you brought it up because we haven't talked about that really. And what better creature to talk about it with than the stone grinding frog?
Yeah. The stone grinding, egg laying. What do they call it?
Lascivious.
There was the word that they use. Chaos phage.
Yeah, see, that was new. That's new because most of my experience with Slaads is 1st and 2nd edition. I think it was 4th edition that introduced the phage, which ultimately made them even scarier.
Somebody liked Slaads who worked on 4th edition because 4th edition is the only edition that every monster manual released has a Slaad in it, a new Slaad.
Oh, really?
And I mean, oh yeah, and there's much more in 4th. They actually got rid of a lot of them in 5th that they introduced in 4th. I mean, I wrote some of them down. They have the Flux Slaad, which keeps changing its vulnerabilities. They've got you'll like this. I know you'll like this one, Nathaniel. The Slaad Spawner. The Slaad Spawner wades into combat and he looks like he's covered in boils and warts. And when you strike him, you cut open a boil and a little Slaad pops out.
God.
Is 4th the one that had the demon goddess for the Slaads?
No, they got rid of all the deities for them in 4th. 4th was actually the one that stopped the Slaad lords. It said no more Slaad.
Oh my
lords.
God. Slaad pustules. I love it. I love it.
And they actually got the one Slaad I couldn't find in 4th edition was the Death Slaad. And they seem to replace it with this Black Slaad, which is like a void Slaad. And that's where that comes from.
I really liked that the white Slaad and the black Slaad had different like high level magical abilities. And the white Slaads
those are the new ones, right?
That was the 4th edition ones, yeah. And the white Slaad,
they're gone in 5th.
Kind of control mastery over time. So there was a notable white Slaad that would just bring iterations of itself. So you would just fight hundreds of this white Slaad that were just that white Slaad from a second ago.
You couldn't defeat something like that.
Oh my God. How much fun would that be?
No.
You would have to find a way to go back in time and defeat the first white Slaad.
Right?
Okay, well, if you want a time travel campaign, here we go.
And there's some other interesting Slaad that get introduced. There's one, it talks about the Githzerai who live in limbo with the Slaad and weirdly don't fight with them very often. There's actually a Slaad, a lawful Slaad.
I did read about that one. Yeah. I don't remember the name either. It's like Gloomray or something like that.
Yeah, it's like a Grumel or something.
It's a lawful, it's Slaad, but lawful.
And they work with the Githzerai to fight the Slaad, or they try to drive the Githzerai to fight the Slaad because obviously they're completely backwards in terms of their alignments. And there's some other oddities. Did you know there are actually other? Have you heard of the other Slaad lords, Nathaniel? The ones that didn't make the cut.
No,
really?
No. I need to know.
Okay, there are two others that didn't quite make the cut. The first was introduced in 1988, and his name is Wartle.
Yeah, I wonder why.
Wartle it stars in a single campaign. I can't remember the name of the campaign. But he starts out as a you don't know he's a Slaad lord because he was injured in a fight with Yigurul and was cast down out of the Slaad lords and basically he tricks the players into helping build him back up into a Slaad lord.
The Wartle thing that I read that I thought was hilarious was Yigurul turns him into a meteor and throws him at a celestial. I don't remember where I read it. Somewhere on the internet this afternoon in my haze of like, what is wrong with these creatures?
That's my man, Igor.
The other one that didn't make it was in Dungeon 101, and that was Bazim Gorag the Firebringer. He was included in a single adventure again where he was bound to a vault. and the player characters have to finish him off and ensure he stays bound, or they can join in his madness and decide that it'd be best to release him into the world.
That sounds like Dungeon 101. That was third ed era. That was actually...
That was third. That was third ed.
Yeah, okay. I could be wrong, but I think 100 was where they switched to full third ed all the time. Huh, okay.
So anyway, just some little Slaad trivia that it's fun because they've been around for a long time. I think you're right when you say they don't get used very much.
Yeah.
And it's a shame. You mentioned Demon Stone at the beginning, and whether the game was great or not is sort of up to up to. It probably is not good today.
It's not. I tried playing it today. I pulled it off the shelf and ran it, and it's not. It's not good.
But the story was written by R.A. Salvatore.
And Driz does make an appearance in the game. You actually get to play as him for a stage.
Yes, he does in everything written by R.A. Salvatore.
I think it was Robin Atkin Downs did his voice.
But it is a good story. It is a really good story about the Slaad, and I think it does go to show that as you mentioned when you talked about it, you had two factions that are pitted against each other, and the Slaad is sort of manipulating everything, but he's also crazy. So you're not quite sure what he's going to do. Good stories could come out about the Slaad. Reading about them for today's show, I really would love to see them have their own campaign for 5th edition.
Same. I do find it amusing that much like their whole focus of being chaotic and unpredictable, so has their history in the canon of Dungeons and Dragons. Like, they're just never the same between editions.
Well, and clearly somebody likes them and, gave them a lot of love. I also think one of the reasons they stick around is it's one of the few Dungeons and Dragons monsters that is copyrighted. One of the very few ones that can't be used. And actually, the reason it's copyrighted is because it was made by a player, and Wizards of the Coast copyrighted all those, or TSR copyrighted all those before it went to Wizards of the Coast in order to avoid liability. So that's why they ended up that way. And part of me wonders, sadly, a little bit, if one of the reasons they stick around is only because they are copyrighted and they want to keep up that, they want to keep up that appearance and that use. I don't know.
Well, Mr. Strauss, thank you for making the Slaad.
Absolutely. And do read his books. As Nathaniel says, they're pretty fun.
So thanks everybody for hanging around and for discussing the Slaadi. Now that I know how to properly pluralize that name. You can find us at alignmentmayvary.com. All of our back episodes are there. And thank you so much for Nathaniel to join us today and discuss this really crazy monster. It's been a ride.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for suggesting it. I don't think I ever would have really looked into them. And now, I definitely want to find uses for them. Oh,
God, our campaigns are going to get crazy.
Also, quite possibly some of my favorite gauntlet answers ever. You rock. That was some on-the-spot thinking, my man.
I really just took the whole lascivious grinding and ran with it.
If you guys want to get more products that takes lascivious grinding and runs with it, check out Annie and Nathaniel's work. They are all equal to lascivious grinding. You will grind all over them.
And on that note, I think we'll end there.
Send pictures of yourself grinding to Nathaniel.
No! Oh God, no!
Why, John?
Right.
Why?
Thanks everybody, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Fan art episode.
No.
Thank you.